What is going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with another top 10s list, and this is a big one because I had to go on my letterbox and see that I logged in over 107 new releases that came out in 2021. Had to sit down with a pen and paper and narrow that list down to 10 of my favorites, and that's exactly what we're going over today. I'm so excited to share with you all my top 10 best movies of 2021. Cinemas were back, ladies and gentlemen. We were back in the movie theaters. We got some really good blockbusters, some great independent films, and I'm so excited to go over that list with you all. But before we do so, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And as you can see on the screen now, if you enjoyed this video, well, do me a favor, make sure you like the video and share the video. But more importantly, in the comment section, go ahead and share your top 10 best movies that you saw in 2021. So before we get into my top 10 list, I do have some honorable mentions that I want to go over. Starting off with earlier this year, Matt Mikkelsen gave us a great dark comedy drama by the name of Riders of Justice. Netflix gave us an amazing animated film by the name of The Mitchells vs. the Machines. I think that this is the best modern live action Disney film to date in Cruella. What a great comedy by Free Guy and Ryan Reynolds. My favorite musical of the year was In the Heights. Apple TV Plus gave us an amazing drama by the name of Coda. And then Netflix gave us a Western with a lot of fun and so much swagger by the name of The Harder They Fall. So those are my honorable mentions, all films that I really enjoyed. I reviewed all those movies on this channel, but they just weren't able to make my top 10 list. But do me a favor, share your honorable mentions in the comments and let's discuss that. So with all that being said, it's time for the main event, and let's get into my top 10 movies of 2021. Starting off with number 10. Now, I recently got the chance to see this film for the second time in theaters, and once I saw it for the second time, I'm like, you know what, it's in my top 10. This is the biggest film to come out in over 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man No Way Home. What an event film of the year. It's still climbing in the box office. It is my second favorite trilogy in the MCU behind Captain America. But just looking at Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, what a progression for that character, especially in this third film. He became Spider-Boy and became a man in this movie, going against some of my favorite villains in Doc Ock, and Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin was fantastic. I thought that it had a lot of heart. It had great emotion, some really good comedic beats. But again, I can't stress enough the performances of Tom Holland, Zendaya, Willem Dafoe, and then spoiler alert for all those that haven't seen it yet, in 3, 2, 1, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. What a cinematic moment in history, and seeing that in theaters with an audience was just a chef's kiss. So Spider-Man No Way Home made my top 10 list. I'm so excited that the film is doing great numbers, and I'm excited to see what the character has up his sleeve in the coming years. But let me know where Spider-Man landed on your list, if it even did. But moving on to my number 9, let's stick within the superhero genre, but let's go across the pond in the DC universe. I'm talking about a film that I don't think we'll ever see this happen again. I'm talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. And what I mean by never seeing it again, think about the social media presence of that film, the petitions of that film that took over 4 years to make, and have it come to HBO Max. And wow, I'm a fan of Zack Snyder. I know he's not for everyone. I know his interpretation of the characters isn't for anyone, but for my personal sensibilities, he has given us my favorite Superman in Henry Cavill. He's given us probably the most comic book accurate version of Batman, in my opinion, minus the killing. And also, you know, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. The version of this film, the 4-hour cut of seeing Cyborg, who was the heart and soul of this movie. I'm still not the biggest fan of Ezra Miller version of The Flash, but I can see what Zack Snyder was trying to do with the character. And then just looking at all the nuance, the story that Zack was able to tell, and seeing, I'm a DC fan at heart, seeing the Trinity on the big screen, seeing the Justice League on the big screen for the first time, and in the real right manner that Zack Snyder wanted us to see it in. I thought it was a beautiful thing that we were able to see this. I am someone that is a fan of the idea of seeing Zack Snyder continuing to tell these stories, whether it is on HBO Max. I mean, come on, DC, you're embracing Earth 2 with Matt Reeves' Batman, and we're entering the multiverse with The Flash. We can have Zack Snyder do his own thing on the side, but even if we don't get that, I was happy that he was able to get his version of the film out there, and that is my number 9, Zack Snyder's Justice League, which brings me to another comic book film, but going back to the MCU. This is my favorite MCU project project in Phase 4 so far. I'm talking about Chloe Zhao's The Eternals. Now, I know this is the most kind of divisive film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, but I love the film. I thought it had such great performances. I love the diversity in the cast. I love Chloe's way that she brought kind of the locations to this, being on set and being on location brought some authenticity to the film. I thought that it was just such on a scope and level of the MCU, dealing with Eternals, dealing with Celestials and free will, and just all the conversations, and the script was great and the characters were fantastic. I can't wait to see these characters again on the big screen or maybe appear in a Disney Plus show. I know, again, people have their flaws with it, but I think it's the most unique MCU film in Phase 4 so far, and in my top 10, my personal top 10 MCU film is The Eternals, and that's why it's making my number 8 slot. Let me know what you all thought about Eternals and if it made your list. But let's move on to my number 7 film, and this is a big one here because this is a bye-bye to my personal favorite, 007. I'm talking about 007 No Time to Die. I thought Cary Fukunaga did such a great job of paying homage to all the James Bond movies, at least the ones that I've seen, and just paying homage to Daniel Craig's, time in the role, which he's personally my favorite Bond. I thought it was such a great send-off for the character, but just focusing on the movie, action was fantastic. The cinematography was gorgeous. The soundtrack and the score by Hans Zimmer was incredible. The swan song moment, again, spoilers here in 3, 2, 1. The moment of seeing Daniel Craig sacrifice his life. Obviously, he saved the world a million times in all his movies, right? But being able to put a face and a name to him sacrificing himself, with it being his love of his life and his daughter, was just such an emotional moment for me, and I thought this was the most emotional 007 film that I've personally seen. I really enjoyed that film. I can't wait to add to my collection, and that's why No Time to Die is coming in at number 7 for me. Moving on to number 6. This film came out very early in the year, and it still made my list. It was one of the most impactful films that I saw in 2021, and that is Judas and the Black Messiah. Obviously, the film has won its awards during the Oscar season, and particularly Daniel Kaluuya won for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal as Fred Hampton, which he was incredible. Lakeith Stanfield was great. Dominique Fishback. I mean, everyone brought their A game, but in particular, the direction by Shaka King was incredible. The movie was just so timely, had so much to say, and then you think about the last 15 minutes of the movie, it was just some of the most emotional moments I've had all year, and it was just so impactful, and that's why Judas and the Black Messiah comes in at my number 6. So there's my 6 through 10, my honorable mentions. Before we get into my top 5, if you stuck around to this point of the video, I appreciate you. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like the video, share the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into the top 5, and coming in at number 5 is a sequel of a horror film that was one of my favorites this past decade, and that is A Quiet Place Part 2. I personally think that Part 2 is just slightly better than Part 1 because it just had more emotional depth, in my opinion. I love the direction and the scope that John Krasinski brought to this film. I thought Emily Blunt was incredible, but those kids really brought their A game, and they were given a lot more to do in this sequel. I'm so excited to see how things wrap up in a third film, which I hope comes out sooner rather than later. But again, it's the emotional resonance that sits with me in this film, and the thrilling aspects, the action aspects, the horrific elements of this story. And you think about how the film ends to lead into a third one, was just such a great way to cap off a great sequel, which we know sequels aren't always that great, but I think that this sequel is better than the original. That's just my opinion. But coming in at number 5 is A Quiet Place Part 2. But let's get into my top 4 here, and coming in at number 4, this film was on my most anticipated movies for 2 years in a row, and it did not disappoint, and that is Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Timothée Chalamet as Paul, Zendaya, Jason Momoa as Duncan. I mean, the list goes on from the performances. What a beautiful looking film. The score by Hans Zimmer, the story being on Arrakis and the spice, and I am so happy that we're getting a Part 2, and I thought this was a great setup for a Part 2, and hopefully we get the HBO Max show, we get more stories in this universe, because I think Denis Villeneuve, if you all don't know, is my personal favorite director. This isn't my favorite film of his. I still have Blade Runner 2049 as my number 1, but what an incredible sci-fi adventure film, and I'm just so happy that it was successful, and I'm so happy for more of these stories. But I just thought Dune was so incredible. You can check out my full thoughts on the film, but it is my number 4 on my list, Dune. I loved it. But let's get into the top 3, and these next 3 films are the only 3 movies that were 5 out of 5 for me this year. And coming in number 3 is an independent film that I can't recommend enough, by the name of 9 Days, which marks the directorial debut of Ed Sonoda, I thought that he did such a great job of directing this story that talks about the meaning of life, and what a phenomenal performance by Wilson Duke, who is a force to reckon with. Zazie Beetz was great in this film. We had Benedict Wong, who was incredible. The supporting cast just really brought it all together, but it's just a beautiful film. Again, it talks about the meaning of life and the purpose of life, and just such a beautiful story to see. And again, the performance and direction was just incredible. Again, I know a lot of people haven't seen this film, but if it's available to stream, I highly recommend you all give it a watch. You will not be disappointed. 9 Days, for me, got a 5 out of 5, and that's why it's coming in at number 3, which brings us to my top 2 movies of 2021. And this next film here is probably the most inspiring movie that I've seen this year. It's one of my favorite sports films in recent memory. I'm talking about King Richard. Man, did Will Smith bring his A game. He's one of my favorite actors of all time, and I think this is one of his best performances in a very long time. Again, I mentioned sports movies. Obviously him and Muhammad Ali was so great, but him as Richard, and seeing how he raised his daughters, and seeing Anjanou Ellis and her portrayal in the movie, and seeing those young actresses bringing their A game off the court, on the court. John Berthold was a great addition. I thought that the film just had so much heart. Again, it was so inspiring to see those girls coming from Compton. I'm very familiar with the Serena and Venus story, where they came from, but I just seeing the nuances and the depth of how they came to be who they are today, some of the greatest athletes of all time. I thought the film was just, I remember sitting in the theater getting so emotional, being so happy, and walking out of the theater on cloud 9, and that's why King Richard is my number 2 favorite film of this year, which brings us to my number 1 movie. And if you've been following this channel for a while, you know how highly I spoke about this film, and it is my number 1 movie of 2021, and that is The Green Knight, written and directed and edited by David Lowery. I thought this film, from a visual standpoint, was an absolute masterpiece. It's the best looking movie I saw this year. The themes and the metaphor, I'm a fan of Arthur and the whole story of Arthurian stories. I'm a big fan of all of that lore, and this film was just such a different interpretation that I've ever seen from the character. And again, tackling themes of legacy, nobility, lust, this journey that we see Dev Patel go on, which his performance is absolutely incredible. The film, to me, again, it's just, I go back to theatrical experiences, just sitting, and I know the film isn't for everyone. I completely understand that, but for me personally, just that journey, it's visual storytelling at its absolute best. And again, David Lowery, I can't wait to see what he does next. He's one of my favorite directors working in Hollywood, and you can just see the passion and the love that he has in this film, and that's why The Green Knight is my number 1 favorite film of 2021. Might be controversial, but it's just my list. But hey, I want to know your list in the comments below. Again, share your honorable mentions, your top 10, and let's have a discussion about it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fun video to make. What a year for cinema. I can't wait to see what 2022 has up its sleeve, which, by the way, keep an eye out for my most anticipated movies coming out in 2022. But again, 2021 had its ups, had its downs, but overall, I'm happy with what we got this year. So there you have it. I really had a good time. If you stuck around to this point in the video, I appreciate you. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. I do want to take the moment to just thank you all for the support on the channel, watching all the movie reviews that we discussed, watching some of the live streams that we had about these movies. It really means a lot to me, and I'm so excited for 2022 and to talk about more movies with you all. So thank you for watching this video. As you all can see on the screen now, subscribe to my channel, check out my other content, and keep an eye out for some more lists coming in the coming days. Happy New Year to you all, and we'll see you on the next video.